Let's be direct about something. The sport that 3 billion people call their own, a game born on muddy factory yard pitches, invented by miners and steelworkers, played with balled-up rags in back alleys across 6 continents, is now run by a man who handed Donald Trump a peace prize, lets fans pay $8,000 for a seat at the final, and just announced he plans to keep running the whole machine until 2031. And the most extraordinary part, nobody inside FIFA can stop him. But something is changing. Something just happened behind closed doors that FIFA's leadership hoped would never happen again. And if you understand the history of how we got here, you'll understand exactly why this moment feels different. On May 27, 2015, Zurich woke up like any other morning. Bankers sipped coffee, executives filed into offices, and inside the 5-star Bor au Lac hotel, top officials from the most powerful sports organization on earth were sitting down to conduct their annual business. Then Swiss police walked in and started making arrests. 7 of FIFA's top officials were taken into custody that morning. The United States Department of Justice had unsealed a sweeping indictment alleging the payment of more than $150 million in kickbacks and bribes to FIFA executives, e.g. money paid by the people who wanted a piece of the Men's World Cup. Then, Attorney General Loretta Lynch stood before the cameras and called what she found inside FIFA rampant, systemic, and deep-rooted. The corruption wasn't a few bad actors. It was the system itself. Long-serving President Sepp Blatter, who had led the organization for 17 years, resigned within days, though he wasn't indicted. In the chaos that followed, 31 people ultimately pleaded guilty to charges ranging from racketeering to wire fraud to money laundering. It was the most damaging scandal in the history of organized sport. And for a brief, remarkable window, in the weeks after those arrests, the men and women who run European football looked at each other and asked a question they had never dared to ask before. What if we just walked? They almost did. The major European football powers were within days of breaking away from FIFA entirely. They saw the opening. They were ready to move. And then a tall Swiss-Italian lawyer who had worked for UEFA, Europe's football confederation, stepped forward and told them he was different. His name was Gianni Infantino, and he promised to give FIFA back to football. He won the presidency in February 2016, and Europe stayed. At that moment in time, there was an opening, said Miguel Poiares Maduro, a Portuguese jurist who was brought in after the scandal to lead FIFA's new independent governance committee. That opening existed. Maduro was supposed to enforce due diligence and political neutrality within FIFA structures. He was there to make the reforms real, not just rhetorical. He didn't last long. Infantino's leadership fired Maduro and 2 of his committee members in 2017, just 11 months into the job, after months of escalating conflict over a series of politically sensitive decisions. One of those conflicts involved Maduro's refusal to allow Russian Deputy Prime Minister Vitaly Mutko to sit on FIFA's council, a clear breach of the rules against governmental interference in sport. For making that call, Maduro was shown the door. In his own words, FIFA's leadership did not want public accountability. FIFA basically operates as a political cartel, Maduro told Fortune magazine in June 2026, with a high concentration of power in the president. Ultimately, he ends up determining who operates at every level of football. He wasn't finished. He told British MPs the same thing. Only external pressure would ever force FIFA to change. From within, the system was self-sealing. And it wasn't just Maduro. FIFA's chief ethics investigator, Cornel Borbeli, and ethics judge Hans-Joachim Eckert were also removed in May 2017. Borbeli called his removal, and Eckert's, de facto, the end of FIFA's reform efforts. Investigators who later obtained internal emails found that Infantino was himself under investigation for serious ethics violations at the precise moment he moved to fire the people investigating him. The new chair of the Ethics Committee's investigatory chamber subsequently claimed Infantino was not under investigation. The email record told a different story. So, that is the foundation of what we are dealing with. Not a governing body that stumbled into bad habits. A political machine that was built to keep power concentrated and to eliminate anyone who threatened that concentration. Maduro's words, political cartel, were chosen carefully by a man trained in law and governance. He meant them exactly as he said them. Now, Let's talk about Gianni Infantino because he is the engine of everything that has happened since. He is 56 years old. He is a Swiss-Italian lawyer who succeeded Sepp Blatter after Blatter's disgrace and promised a new era of transparency. Over the past decade, he has, by any commercial measure, delivered enormous results. This summer's World Cup is set to generate approximately $8.9 billion in revenue, roughly double what the 2024 Paris Olympics earned. Of that, $3.9 billion comes from broadcasting rights, $3 billion from ticketing and hospitality, $1.8 billion from sponsorship. FIFA's revenues over this 4-year cycle will rise an estimated 73% compared to the previous cycle. The Club World Cup, which Infantino expanded from 7 clubs to 32, delivered $2 billion in additional FIFA revenue last year alone, netting Infantino himself a 33% boost to his bonus. His total annual compensation package is estimated at $6 million. His defenders will tell you this is competence. His critics will tell you the money is the mechanism of control. Here is how the money works. FIFA has 211 member associations, one in almost every country on Earth. Every 4 years, each of those associations receives a payment from FIFA. Under the FIFA Forward system Infantino implemented in 2016, that payout can reach up to $8 million per association over a 4-year cycle to be used for developing the sport. Much of that funding flows to smaller, poorer nations, the Jordans and Uzbekistans and Curaçaos, who qualified for this World Cup, partly because FIFA's expansion created more spots for exactly those nations. And in June 2026, each of the 48 competing teams is guaranteed at least $12.5 million from FIFA. The generosity is real. The strings attached are also real. Each of those 211 associations gets 1 vote for FIFA president. Giant China, 1 vote. Tiny Samoa, 1 vote. Nations whose national football associations depend on FIFA funds for operational survival. 1 vote each, the same as England or Germany or Brazil. French soccer journalist Simon Bolo, in his new book FIFA Connection, Inquiry into the Infantino System, describes what this creates with clinical precision. A system of fealty. The associations dependent on FIFA's money are incentivized to support the man distributing it. Today, the first criterion of this global body is money, Bowley writes, and the president does not even try to hide it. The result is that Infantino has been re-elected twice unopposed and has already announced his intention to stand again in 2027. Under FIFA's rules, a president may serve up to 3 consecutive 4-year terms. However, Infantino's initial 39 months in office from 2016 have not been counted as a full term, a technical interpretation that effectively clears the way for him to remain in power until 2031. At the 76th FIFA Congress in Vancouver in May 2026, he confirmed those plans to stand again. He reportedly has backing from 111 member nations across Asia, Africa, and South America. No opponent has declared. The election is a formality. 1 man. No competition. Complete control over the sport that 3 billion people watch. That is not a governing body. That is a monopoly wearing a referee's uniform. And this brings us to the 2026 World Cup, Infantino's tournament, built in his image, staged in the country whose president he has been photographed with more than any other world leader. The World Cup kicked off on June 11th in Mexico City and runs through July 19th, when the final takes place at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. 48 nations are competing, up from 32 at the last Men's World Cup in Qatar. 104 matches will be played across 16 cities in 3 countries, the United States, Mexico, and Canada. The first time in history, a World Cup has been hosted across 3 nations simultaneously. The scale is staggering. Infantino has delivered the biggest sporting event in recorded history, and he wanted everyone to know it was his. At the World Cup draw ceremony in Washington, D.C. in December 2025, held at the Kennedy Center, Infantino presented Donald Trump with a newly created award, the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize. The award was described as honoring individuals who have taken exceptional and extraordinary actions for peace and by doing so have united people across the world. Trump accepted the trophy and medal and said in his characteristic way, The world is a safer place now. The Guardian reported a growing sense of embarrassment among mid-level and senior FIFA officials over the decision. Al Jazeera documented widespread criticism from football officials and players who called the prize a politicization of sport. FIFA reaffirmed its commitment to the decision and did not respond to what it called rumors of internal concern. To understand why that prize matters beyond the optics, you have to understand the relationship it represents. Infantino attended Trump's second inauguration in January 2025. He attended Trump's Gaza Peace Summit in Egypt. He has been photographed alongside Trump at the White House and at multiple international venues. The partnership is not subtle, and it is not accidental. The 2026 World Cup required the cooperation of the United States government at the highest levels. FIFA needed Trump. Trump wanted the World Cup. Each man gave the other something valuable. The Peace Prize was the receipt. That relationship has also produced some of the most uncomfortable moments in the tournament's build-up. Trump's travel ban executive orders, which took effect on January 1, 2026, placed full travel restrictions on citizens of multiple countries. 4 of those countries, Iran, Haiti, Senegal, and the Ivory Coast, qualified for the World Cup. Iran and Haiti face complete restrictions. Senegal and the Ivory Coast face partial restrictions. Under the exemptions, players, team officials, and immediate family members traveling for World Cup purposes can enter the United States. The fans cannot. Julian Kouadio, president of the Ivory Coast's National Supporters Group, confirmed that his country's home-based fans have been denied visas. There is no exemption for them. They trained, they qualified, they earned their spot, and their supporters cannot follow them. Infantino gave Trump the FIFA Peace Prize. Trump's administration effectively banned the fans of 4 qualified nations from attending. FIFA did not pull the tournament. FIFA did not issue a formal protest. FIFA, in the words of one former official, told the angry fans to chill. Then, there are the tickets. The 2026 World Cup features the most expensive ticket prices in the tournament's history. FIFA employed dynamic pricing for the first time, a variable pricing model where costs fluctuate based on demand. The average price for the cheapest seats at opening matches in U.S. host cities ranges from $253 to $1,399, according to an NBC News analysis. The average resale price for cheap seats at the final, at MetLife Stadium, is $8,586. On FIFA's own resale and exchange marketplace, final tickets have been listed for millions of dollars. FIFA charges a 15% purchase fee to the buyer and a 15% resale fee to the seller on that marketplace. When tickets first went on general sale in December 2025, the cheapest group stage tickets started at $140. The cheapest tickets for the final started at $4,185. Fan groups around the world erupted. Football Supporters Europe accused FIFA of a monumental betrayal. In late 2025, under enormous pressure, FIFA introduced a new tier of tickets at $60 for supporters of participating teams. The national associations whose teams are playing would receive 8% of tickets for each match at a fixed $60 price. But the general market continued to operate on dynamic pricing. A website glitch in early June 2026 accidentally gave some fans free tickets. FIFA sent those fans demand letters telling them to pay up within 7 days or lose their seats. The Attorneys General of New York and New Jersey announced a formal investigation into FIFA's ticketing practices in late May 2026. A poll from Ipsos found that 59% of Americans say the overall cost of attending a World Cup game is too expensive for the average American. 2% said it was affordable. Even Trump, whose administration co-enabled the tournament's political architecture, told reporters in May that he wouldn't pay $1,000 for a ticket to see the U.S. men's national team either. Football legend Gary Lineker, who won the Golden Boot at the 1986 World Cup, expressed fears about what FIFA's pricing model does to the soul of the sport. The great thing about the World Cup, the joy of it, is the Brazilian fans arriving in their thousands, and the Argentinians, and the Dutch in their orange. But are FIFA going to price them out? Is it going to be purely corporate? How can people afford those prices? Lineker asked. In Qatar 2022, Argentinian fans sold their cars to get to the games. That won't be enough this time. The Fortune magazine, June to July 2026 cover story asked the defining question: has the World Cup made FIFA too big to fail? The piece quoted Benita Merciades, a former Australian soccer executive who helped expose FIFA's corruption in the 2000s. FIFA is almost too big to fail or too big to pull apart. Overhauling it, she said, is very, very difficult. Everybody wants their country to win the World Cup. That last sentence is the key to understanding why FIFA's control has proven so durable. No player risks being ousted from the World Cup. No nation risks losing its slot. When 12 rich European clubs tried to form a breakaway European Super League in 2021, Infantino simply told them, "You're in or you're out." The idea collapsed in 48 hours. No player dared risk a World Cup ban. Foreign policy described the current situation as FIFA's Versailles moment, a reference to the French royal court's historic detachment from the population it governed. FIFA is selling limited edition host city jerseys for $375 each, roughly 37% of the average American family of four's monthly food budget. The organization calls itself a non-profit. It expects $9 billion in revenue from this single tournament. About 80% of American hotels in host cities reported World Cup bookings below expectations heading into June. The crowds will come because the sport pulls people in. But the economic reality of this World Cup has already made it the most controversial in history. And here is where this story turns. Because the same question that the European football powers were asking in the days after the 2015 hotel arrests is being asked again right now. Inside closed-door meetings at the highest levels of European football this week, the nations that control over $100 billion in football revenue have formally discussed building a structure that does not need FIFA to function. England, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, Brazil, Argentina. The 8 nations that generate the overwhelming majority of global football's commercial value sat in a room and asked the question that FIFA has spent 2 decades making sure nobody asked out loud: what happens if we just leave? The math makes the threat real, in a way it wasn't in 2015. England's Premier League alone generates approximately $4 billion per year in revenue. Germany's Bundesliga, Spain's La Liga, France's Ligue 1, Italy's Serie A, add them together with the South American giants and you have a football economy of staggering size. Infantino himself told investors at the Milken Institute's global conference in Los Angeles in May 2026 that the global soccer economy is approximately $300 billion per year, with 70% generated from Europe. The 8 nations sitting in that room represent the core of that 70%. Their leverage comes from a fundamental structural reality. FIFA earns most of its money from one event: the Men's World Cup. The World Cup only matters because the best players in the world play in it. Those players play in the clubs owned by the football associations and leagues of these 8 nations. Pull those nations out, and the product FIFA sells to broadcasters and sponsors for billions of dollars stops being the product that anyone will pay billions for. This is what makes the current moment genuinely different from every other moment of reform pressure since 2015. Infantino cannot fire this committee. There is no committee to fire. There are 8 sovereign football federations representing the commercial engine of global football, asking whether the current arrangement still serves them, or only serves him. The question of what FIFA reform actually looks like, if it ever arrives, is complicated by the same structural math that makes Infantino's position so entrenched. 211 member associations, most of them dependent on FIFA funds, each voting equally alongside the richest nations in the world. That system does not self-correct. Miguel Maduro said it plainly to British MPs after he was fired. Only external pressure would force change. He was right then. The external pressure building today, from the 8 nations, from fan groups filing formal complaints with the European Commission over ticket pricing, from state attorneys general opening investigations in New York and New Jersey, from Fortune and Foreign Policy and every major outlet covering the 2026 World Cup, As much as a political story as a sporting one, is the most concentrated pressure FIFA has faced since the Swiss police walked into that Zurich hotel 11 years ago. Saudi Arabia clinched the rights to the 2034 World Cup in late 2024 as the sole bidder, after FIFA broke with precedent by requiring its members to vote on the 2030 and 2034 hosts at the same meeting. That left only Saudi Arabia, a major financial backer of FIFA, with a ready bid for the later event. The entire process revealed how thoroughly FIFA's decision-making has been shaped by relationships between Infantino and the Gulf states. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is among the foreign leaders with whom Infantino's critics say he has cultivated unusually close ties. The 2026 World Cup will end on July 19th. The scores will be settled on the pitch. Spain's Lamine Yamal, the 18-year-old son of modest-income African immigrants who a sharp-eyed scout at Barcelona spotted at age 10, is set to earn up to $46 million this year and is one of the tournament's central stars. The football itself will be extraordinary. It almost always is. But after the final whistle, the structural question will remain. One man, no competition, control over the sport 3 billion people love, running a machine that generated $9 billion this summer, while fans from qualified nations were turned away at the border, while the cheapest seat at the final cost what a family of 4 spends on food for 3 months, while the reform committee he hired to clean up FIFA was fired for trying to do exactly that. History remembers the 2015 arrests as the moment that nearly changed everything. Whether 2026 becomes the moment that actually did will depend on whether 8 nations in a closed room have the conviction to follow through on a question that FIFA has spent 2 decades ensuring nobody asked out loud. The opening exists. Whether anyone walks through it, that is the story that comes next.